Hello, everyone, and hello again, Trevon. Welcome to Sip the Tea with me, Madame Askew. What a pleasure to have you here, and
Yeah,
I'm so glad you could join us.
thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yes, it's amazing. Well, you are such a busy bee. You are doing so many cool things. Last time we were going to meet earlier, everyone, but you were in a production recently.
I
Can you
was.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the last time I was actually during doing the show Titanic the musical. So it was here in Phoenix, actually in Gilbert, excuse me. But yeah, and that was super fun. It ran for 7 weeks. So that was a lot, 7 weeks and 6 shows a week. So that was pretty tiresome. So
Ah,
Uh, so it's super fun, but I'm here today and I'm so excited to be here with all of you lovely individuals.
I'm so glad you could be here. And I love that you're a working actor as well as a costumer. You are really in the arts. And one of the things I noticed the first time we met was how vibrant you are, how energetic you are, and how much passion you
Yeah.
have for performing in the arts. How did you get from being an actor into historical interpreting, or did it go the other direction where you're doing
No,
the interpreting first?
absolutely. Yes. So it actually started from, of course, me being an actor first. The theater has my heart. I absolutely love the theater with every inch, every bone, every fiber of my being. Um, but I think the historical interpretation really came from, or the love for historical costuming in general, came from my first time, and this may be a bit controversial, on watching Gone with the Wind. And I absolutely fell in love with Scarlett O'Hara's dresses, and I was just so enamored by the costuming and the work and the detailing. And I started making costumes for myself during, it was just usually during just Halloween, and I would make my own
Yes.
dresses. And that would be the one time of the year I could put on a dress and feel glamorous. And this is also prior to me living in my authenticity. And then I just started feeling, I just loved the feeling that I got from wearing these things. And I started saying to myself, well, why can't I feel like this all the time?
Nice. Nice. Oh
Yeah.
my
So,
goodness. Well,
so I,
I love that you bring up this controversial film that we collectively as a community we've
yeah,
needed to reevaluate our relationship with this film. But
yeah,
I don't think there's any shame in saying this is what inspired me first. I've
exactly.
definitely moved on from there because the person doing the costumes for that movie was incredible, and those costumes were stunners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my sister she would tell me all the time, like, oh, I want you to make me this, or I want that green dress that Scarlett made out of the drapes. And I was like, well, I kind of want to wear that too. And so yeah, and from there I actually started learning that there was a historical community where there were people who were doing this often and for a living. And I mean, you would have thought I would have won the lottery because I was so happy to know that I wasn't the oddball. I wasn't the only person who was so in love with historical fashion and, the fabrics and the detail work of these things and the craftsmanship that comes with this. It was just, lovely. So from then I have just been just throwing myself into it. As you can see behind me, all my hats.
Yes. Well, Lady June Squill immediately noticed your hat collection behind you. And it is a stunning collection. And you
You,
look so good in all of those hats too.
you,
So,
my dear.
so good. Now you do a variety of periods historically. We met because of our shared passion for
Uh,
19th century fashion. But you also time travel to the 50s, the
yeah.
40s, the
Uh,
60s. You have a breadth of experience.
yes, yes, yes. So yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because a lot of times when you go on my page, a lot of people just see the 19th century fashion, and not knowing that I share the same love for vintage fashion as well. And like you said, primarily for me, as far as vintage goes, I think I go back to at least 1935 to about 1963. Between those periods is where I really dive into. And I have nothing against the late 60s. I think the go-go fashion was amazing, and I think the 70s was great. But I just have a different feel and a different love for the vintage fashion between those time periods, and nothing against my 1920 girlies.
No, no, yeah.
I just don't think I pull it off well.
I mean, sometimes you pick the era because the silhouette suits you, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And I feel like too, especially for like the 1950s, it's so similar to a lot of the 19th century's fashion with the nipped waist and the big, gort skirts and things of that nature. And it just reminds me a lot of that. So yeah, I do. I love vintage fashion just as much as I love historical. And so it's always funny when I see people say, I didn't know you did that. And I'm like, yeah, I have tons of 50s and 40s, and I have other hats hanging up elsewhere and things of that nature. So it's all over.
Yes. As Captain Azar says, the fashion was so elegant and refined during those eras, very tailored. And one of the things you do so well is your fit. You have incredible shapes. Your silhouettes are always impeccable, and your fit is always so good. And you're so fast. I'm like, how does Trayvon do it? You not that you actually have a million frocks, but you're very fast.
And I think it's kind of that thing when you've been doing it for so long, and as when you've been in this game for so long, things become second nature to you. One thing that really helps is when you have block patterns or things that you constantly work with. You don't have to go back and retrace and do much of anything. A lot of times, I'm wearing the same style of dresses, just changing some things up and making it look a
Yes.
little different. Um, but I think for myself, I spend a lot of hours in this room. I spend a lot of hours in this room sewing, and when I get it in my brain that I want to do something, I want to do it, and I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to get it done because I just can't wait to wear it. I can't wait to present it to the world. And yeah, I'm fast, but I mean, there's a lot of times I'm in here for hours, and I forget to pee or get to go
Right.
or get water.
For me, it's usually I've forgotten to drink water. I've forgotten to have a meal or three. I've just been heads down at the machine. So do you have a favorite time saver though? Something you mentioned your block patterns. That's
Yes, yeah.
something I do as well, where I'll have like a master and then
Just
I make
dabble.
it look different by sort of color, fabric, and
Right.
trim, but I like use the same pattern over and over again. But do you have another time saver that you love in the workshop?
Oh, another one. Let me think. I don't know. I don't know. What would be another time saver for me? Maybe my serger.
Oh yeah.
Maybe
Oh yes.
my other historical friends tend to not, like overlock their seams. I do. I'm one of those people. I'm sorry. I it will eat me up for days and days thinking that my edges are gonna fray. So I would probably definitely think my serger. I mean, and that's after basting,
Mm.
my panels and my bodice panels together and things of the nature, and then just surging it through really speeds the process up versus sitting there hand stitching the edges and whip stitching them together is just too much. So definitely my I don't think she gets enough credit because she saves me
Oh,
tons of time.
yes. No, sergers, as Lady Junesmore says, sergers are the best.
Yeah,
I'm a serger advocate as well. I really appreciate people who are like, I'm going to do it all in historical
yeah,
method as well.
yeah,
I appreciate them very much. It's beautiful, especially if you want to have that experience.
yeah.
But I want the gratification. So, yeah,
Yes.
I'm going to use every modern tool to get there.
Exactly.
So,
And I heard someone say this to me before, where um, where they said if Victorians had, the accessibility to surgeons, they would have used them. Yes.
yes.
And I,
Charles Worth would have been in there with his serger, like, let's go. Look at how many ball gowns I can make now. Yeah, absolutely.
so yeah, I don't think my surgeon gets enough credit, but I'm so thankful for her because she's my heart. She's my rock.
So good. So now we could talk about like all of the fiddly historical sewing techniques. They're amazing. Some of them are very useful, of course. We could really deep dive there, but what I know about both of us is that
Uh,
we like wearing our pretty frocks and
uh,
we like swanning. And you are like a champion swanner. You know how to make an entrance. You look so amazing in your frocks. What is what is one of your like most favorite frocks? I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but we do.
I think oh man, I don't know. It's so hard to pick. One, I can tell you one that I didn't think was going to be a favorite was one I did last year, or was it earlier this year? One or the other. I can't remember when I made it, but it was a Edwardian vest. It was a double-breasted Edward
Yeah.
in the Edwardian gore, 10 gourd skirt. And I came across a picture on Pinterest and I was like, I want to make, something like that. And then when I put it on, I said, okay, this looks more teachery. And that actually ended up being an outfit that actually blew up, and became everyone's favorite.
Yeah.
And so I think that one has definitely grown on me a lot. But I think my absolute favorite one to wear would have been I think it was my white Edwardian lingerie dress because it was the first one I made. And I had been seeing it for so long. I did all the insertion lace. I had, I ordered so much lace
Yeah.
off of Amazon and at the fabric store and things of that nature. And I just felt glorious. And I made the hat from scratch and decorated the hat and, just made sure everything, was perfect, only to wear it for like 15 minutes to take pictures and videos. So, yeah, it was beautiful. And sadly, I did end up selling that. There was another person who asked to buy it, and I did sell it. So I'm super sad because I no longer have her. But
Yeah.
she's at her home.
She's found her forever home. But
Yes, yeah.
those pictures of you in that and watching you create it was
Uh,
so stunning. You looked amazing in that. Yeah, absolutely. It was really beautiful frock. So and the insertion lace, I love insertion like that, but it really
yeah.
ups the labor, it ups the level of difficulty. Sort of infinitely. But it was beautiful. So when you are thinking about a new project, do you go looking for fashion plates? Do you start with sort of a vibe? Or is it like the fabric that triggers the project for you?
I think a lot of the times it's the fabric that triggers me. Uh, and I have a hard, and I know this may be, just ruthless or against all the historical rules. I have such a hard time following fashion plates. And I respect my lovelies who can do that, who can look at a fashion plate and literally
Yes.
recreate that.
Yeah.
And I go there with that same intention that I want to recreate this. And then I start to create it. And then I say, you know what? I don't like those things. I think I want to do this here. And then I say, okay, well, I actually want to add the lace here. Or, you know what? I actually want to put buttons in instead of, hooks and eyes. And by the time the project is over, it's an entirely different project, and so I utilize the fashion plates to make sure that I'm adhering to historical guidelines and making sure like silhouettes that are correct. But
Yes.
for the most part, I will see the fabric and I am just like, that needs to be a bustle dress. I have fabric in my stash right now, and I pass by it every day, and I'm like, come the fall and winter, that's going to be a bustle dress because it's so somber. It's so, it's so that, and I'm like, it just screams that I can't see it as anything else but a bustle dress
Yeah.
with tons of greenery. So definitely
Oh,
the
so exciting. Yeah, I'm with you. I look at the fashion plates, I get some inspiration from them, but I have never managed to recreate one because I'm always like, but what if I tinker here? Oh no, I'm just like trying to get the silhouette right, the balance right. I have the advantage of doing sort of historical fantasy with the steampunk and never feeling totally bound to being perfect. But it's, I don't know. Do you think it's because we're performers and queer, we don't feel constrained? We're just like, all the audacity, I'm gonna do what I want.
absolutely. I definitely believe that it has a lot to do with our creativity. It's just when I'm in my workspace, when I'm in that zone, when I've hit my apple cinnamon tea, um, as I'm working, the creative juices just begin to flow. And again, I allow that, I embrace that. I don't restrict that feeling. I allow it to come to me because, a lot of the times when I think that something won't work well together, it actually ends up being some of my best work where I'm like, I did not know how this was going to come out.
Yeah,
And then it out and it's beautiful and I am just enamored by the beauty of it. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why when people ask me, would you want to live in those time periods? One, no. I would like to go back and get the fabric and maybe some patterns. But I enjoy being able to dress up from any period. I enjoy to be as creative as I would like to be and not necessarily have to adhere to society or societal rules of some sort. I enjoy the time I live in. I think we're in a very crucial time right now for change and so many happening. But as far as that goes, I just think it has a lot to do with who we are as individuals and our personality and allowing those juices to flow the way that they do. And it creates something beautiful. So I'm in love with it.
I love that. I love that description of letting the juices flow. It's so uh, so wonderful. And I feel that when I'm working as well, just like something engages and everything sort of starts falling into place. But you mentioned something in this that you would not wish to live in the past. I don't want to stay there. I like to visit, right? Like
Right.
a tourist, I pop in, I wave, I look at the legal state of things. I'm like, that was nice. It's lovely being here. I'm going to go back, have civil rights, be
Yeah.
a person, be able to own property. It's
Yeah.
very nice. You are at an interesting set of intersections
Yeah.
as a performer, as a
Uh-huh.
costumer.
Yeah.
You're you're a man in a hobby that is, largely women. You're a
Yes.
queer man and you're a person of color
Yes.
and
Yes.
you're young. And honestly, that is quite the set of
Yes.
intersections to bring to the table.
Hmm.
Do you feel that has given you a particular empathy as well as just broadening your insight over the past?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you bring this up because I don't think enough people understand um, that we love historical fashion. We just don't value historical value. We don't
Yes.
cherish those. Um, I and it took me a long time, and I think that's one of the reasons why it took me a long time to really come out and and to do this publicly was because being a person of color in particular, you know, even doing vintage fashion was not a good time for my ancestors, for my, for my great grandparents who did live during that time. And so I never want people to feel as if I'm making a mockery of those people's lives they've gone through, especially women. Women have endured so much, and then, like you said, being a 6'1" Black man in drag, and then doing these things, I make it very clear that I don't speak for women. I can't speak for women. I'm not a woman. I'm not a transgender woman. I'm not a biological woman. I can't speak for women, but I show my appreciation to women by always protecting them and speaking up for them in rooms where they are not being represented. The same thing for people of color. So it is hard at times. I've gotten some comments of like, we were slaves at that time, or we were in chains and things like that nature. And then you have to educate people on certain things that in 1896 we were not slaves, but in 1956 we were not in chains, but we did face a lot of those, Jim Crow, um, oppression, and oppressive times and things of that nature. So it is rough sometimes, being being in this space, to say the least.
It's a hard balancing act, and I admire you for being willing to
Yeah,
do that, because you're certainly never obligated to
yeah,
lift up that baton of education, but you do routinely. I see you doing that on your social media. And
yeah,
also, you are a historical interpreter. You do go into historical spaces
yeah,
and
yeah,
represent, and that is a very educational position to be taking on. But you're so gracious about your presentation, not in a way that's mollifying people, by the by, but in a way that's honoring the people of color, the women of color who existed in those periods. And I think one of the things you do so beautifully, and that I see people like Dandy Wellington and Not Your Mama's History also navigating,
yeah.
is that you remind people that it wasn't all suffering and it wasn't homogenous,
Mhm.
and that Black folks
Yes.
actually were living very vibrant lives in those times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you touched on that too, because um, especially within the Black community, recently, and this is not to bring up anything, but recently, like the Color Purple, the new Color Purple came out last year.
Yes.
And so many Black people were saying, we are tired of seeing these oppressive stories about us. Why can't we just have a break from this? We get it. We have been there. We have tons of these movies. We have tons of these things, and so people, we are tired of seeing that aspect of us. We would like to see us in prosperity. We would like to see us, thriving and living life. And no, it's not perfect, but that narrative of that all people of color were just low to the ground and wasn't beautiful, didn't feel beautiful. That was not always the truth. And one particular show that really highlights that I really love is The Gilded Age, and how they show a lot of the Black wealthy families that lived in Brooklyn, New York in the 1880s, which was true. Um, we did have our own high society in Brooklyn, and it was a part of the assimilation of Black people. But at that time, we still had those things. We had wealthy individuals who were coming out of slavery, or who weren't, who were born into New York and born from wealthier families, who obtained wealth of some sort. And those are the aspects that I want to highlight, is to show that we weren't just in rags. that we definitely had pictures as well, and we had the glamour, and we had the beautiful gowns and the beautiful suits and things of that nature, and ate, some of the finest meals too. So I definitely try to highlight that a lot.
Well, and I love that you brought up the Gilded Age because I I enjoy that show. It's
Yeah,
very like it's the drama. It's so over the top and
yeah,
so historical at the same time. It's wonderful. But my favorite part is really that character and her family. And I just love how she's dealing with these white ladies and this white girl. And sometimes I'm like, do you want to take her out back and have like a really serious conversation with her? How foolish she is, because I do. I want you to have that moment. She's a
absolutely,
wonderful character. She's
absolutely.
navigating a lot. It's really
Yeah,
fantastic. And
yeah,
you do that yourself so thoughtfully. I know that it adds
yeah,
another level to the experience, but you are navigating that and you are showing the joy, the excellence, and the
yeah.
opulence that was possible. You're doing it all in drag.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And your drag is amazing.
Oh, thank you. It has gotten, listen, I have been working on my makeup.
It's so good.
Yeah, and
So
I
good.
and even with the drag, outside of my clothing, I try to be mindful that, of like the hair textures when I'm doing certain time periods. When I first did, I think there was one time I had a wig made for me, and I was doing like 1890s, and the wig was extremely straight. I'm like, that wasn't that wasn't for Black women. It was very curled, it was very kinky, and I'm always just trying to represent as best as possible in every aspect. Now the makeup, yes, is wouldn't have been as accurate, but hey, that there. I gotta so
Yeah.
I have to still pull it together a little bit, but I try to keep it as accurate as possible, when it comes to that, because I want someone who may never have gotten into historical fashion to come along my page and see, man, this is how they looked. This is how my great 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 grandmother might have looked, at that time. So
I
yeah,
mean, routinely, you look like you stepped out of a photograph from the past. I do feel like rather than, trying to be exactly like a fashion plate,
yeah,
you have transformed yourself into someone who could have walked onto the street, been in a
yeah.
photo. It's very like
You,
holistic, your approach. And your makeup is so good. Like, so good. I just love it's impeccable. I do very big, dramatic, over the top makeup because I'm like, I'm a strumpet and it's historical fantasy and blah blah blah. But yours is like so natural and just very beautiful and looks very subtle, even though I know you spent like a million hours on it. I'm just like,
I,
oh yeah, Trayvon just wakes up looking rosy like that. Like
no.
fresh as roses right out of bed.
And that is why I chose to come as Trevon, undressed, no makeup, plain face, so that who Trevon is outside of the makeup and everything.
Yeah, so beautiful. So, yeah, no, and as Captain Azar says, the red lippy is so gorgeous on you every time.
Oh,
The
thank you.
1950s looks are so good. Yeah. So, you are coming to Costume College this year for the first time, your
Yeah,
inaugural visit. You are teaching at least one class.
I'm teaching one class on Friday. Yeah, yeah.
So exciting. I'm
Oh,
thrilled you're going to be there.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Yes. So as you stated, I am coming to Costume College this year. I was convinced to come, which didn't take a lot, but
Yeah.
um and one of my friends, Emily, on Instagram, the Sucky Seamstress, was like, hey, she also mentioned about, my tailoring, and she's like, you're so good at the tailoring. And she said, to teach on that. And I was like, okay, well, see, the thing is this, I'm good with myself. I don't know how I'm good with relaying that information to others and making sure it fits your body correctly. So I was like, you know what? I'll probably look into that next year. And I said, well, what do I want to do to, this year? And I started thinking about the climate of our country right now and what is happening and what is going on. And so I wanted to teach from the perspective of historical inclusivity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I proposed it to the board of Costume College, they were like, "What is that?" So I let them know that I would like to teach on the perspective of how women, how queer individuals, and how marginalized individuals have helped to shape our modern day society today. Because a lot of times you know, a lot of this information goes unknown. It goes forgotten and things of that nature. And there's so much in history that has helped shape us today, as we can see, the good and the bad. And so I particularly wanted to talk from the topic of the 1890s. And because I feel like the 1890s was such a progressive era for so many people, for women, for people of color, for queer individuals. One person in particular that I honed in a lot on in my presentation is Mr. William Dorsey Swan, who was the very first Black drag queen, and he was an ex-slave. And so I really I got into a lot of his life, and so you'll see more of that if you attend the class on Friday at Costume College. But and just talking about other, beautiful people, Ida B. Wells. There is a Hispanic individual, and I don't want to butcher his name, but he was such a prominent inventor during the 1890s. And had no idea, like even prior to, I can't remember the brothers' names who invented the airplane. I can't remember their name,
Oh,
but
the Wright brothers.
yeah,
Yeah.
the right. There you go. And how his inventions helped to spark their idea to start that. And so it's so much history out here that we know nothing about, and how so many civil rights activists, even in the 1890s, we think that civil rights started in the 1950s and 60s, but it started way before then. We're in our queer spaces and things of that nature, and how William Dorsey Swan, put on these balls underground that gave people that opportunity to, show up as who you are and be who you are. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful history. So I really wanted to touch on that. So it's a really great presentation. Please sign up for the class. Put a lot of work into this.
Oh my gosh. I hope that I don't have anything scheduled against it.
Yeah.
I'd love
Yeah.
to attend. It sounds so amazing. And I'm
And
so happy you're doing it.
yes, of course. And just in case, and I did not mean to cut you off, in case
Oh,
you did a costume college, I will be presenting it again next month on August 11th here. Yeah, it's going to be at the Tempe History Museum for the event is called From Petticoats to, I think it's called From Petticoats to from petticoats to patio dresses. So I'll be one of the speakers, and I'll be doing my presentation. There's another lovely speaker where we talk about the 1950s patio dresses and things of that nature. So you can always come then and see it too if you can't make it in costume college.
yes. Trayvon, thank you. Because I know that not everyone can travel
Yeah,
to convention. As much as we love this one, we can't go every year either. Captain Azar and I go every couple of years, but it's still an expense. It's still
yeah,
travel, still all of that. So it's wonderful to work with your local library to be presenting. Um, that was such a fantastic event too, because that really
yeah.
encompasses a lot of interesting history here. So speaking of history and costume college and presentations, for me, when I am working on costume, and part of my love affair with historical costume is learning the history through the fiber arts and through what people were wearing rather than through this lens that's in most of the history books with like few great white men did a few great things, and that's what we learn about. And there are all these people living everyday lives who are moving the needle, right, all the time. So this is clearly something that you are also exploring through fashion. What's a what's something wonderful you've learned because of your fashion exploration about the past?
Absolutely. I have a few things. For one, the number one thing that bothers me is the corsetry. When I hear people things about corsets and oh, they were just so tight and they hurt and they just killed women and they just women just wore them to wear them. And I'm like, it drives me nuts because you know I think that people think, and I think that people think that people of the past were just dumb
Yeah,
and, dumber than us, and that they just did things just to do them. And yeah, there were some people who do those things.
yeah.
But just like today, you wouldn't wear an uncomfortable piece of clothing all day long. What makes you think that they would have done that? And what I learned when I got into corsetry making, because I make all of my corsets as well, I would wear before I started, making my own courses. I would order them, off Amazon or order them from, somewhere else or buy them out of the store. And after a while, they would become uncomfortable because it wasn't made for my particular measurements.
Right.
But what I learned about corsetry and, you know, the um, the process of it and how it is supposed to fit your body, how it's supposed to make you feel. It became life changing to me. I was like, this is how they walked around for 12 hours in a corset and weren't dying. I have an Edwardian corset and I wear it so much. It is so ripped up. I'm working on making another one before custom college. But that's how much I wear it because it's so lovely, but it literally takes my waist in at least 2 inches, and I look fabulous. I look fabulous in it, and a lot of people think I can't breathe because of how nipped in I look, and I'm like, I am actually the most comfortable I've ever been. It provides so much back support. It's lovely. Like I forget I wear it when I'm wearing it, and as you know, doing historical interpretation work, you're there for hours, and with little breaks. So I'm like, I'm walking around. The only thing inserted in my boots, the heels after a while, but definitely the corsetry. And then the layering. I think a lot of people also think that, they were always hot because of long skirts and the high necks and things of that nature. And I get it, not every layering is not for everyone, high necks are not for everyone. But again, if it's 110 degrees, which it wasn't at that time, but if it had been, they would not have worn, the average 3 to 4 petticoats. They might have worn one or two, and it would have been made out of linen, and it would have been made out of more breathable fabrics, things that, would provide some type of ventilation, in within that. So I get those questions all the time, especially during the summertime. Aren't you hot? And I'm like, actually, my wig is the hottest thing. That's hot right now.
Yes. I mean, normally it's my hat and my hair are really
Yeah,
hot. And then the next thing that's like so hot. This is actually the one thing I tell people. Corsets are not a big deal, except they get really warm.
they do get warm.
They
They
get
do.
warm. So I've
They,
gotten really into making single layer corsets in recent years. And they're not like it's not like putting on air conditioner on. They
yeah,
are cooler than the
yeah,
double, triple layer corsets. I'm like, oh, never
yeah.
going back.
Those,
Let's I
I,
want to circle. Oh, please
No,
complete.
no, no. I was just going to add to that. The mesh courses are one thing I'm looking into making because I need it for summertime.
I highly recommend making a corset out of cotton bobinette. And if you
Okay,
have any questions about using that,
I will.
yes, yes, come to me. I'm happy to answer. So let's come back around to your Edwardian corset,
Yeah,
because it is so beautiful. And watching you make that, you shared some
yeah,
of your process online. It was really wonderful. But one of the things I loved is you started out, and I loved this as a learning example. I did not love it for your suffering, to be clear. But like you started out with one pattern company and you're like, well, this is like a really standard
yeah,
same pattern company I normally have good experience with. And then you
yeah,
were like, the silhouette is rubbish. I'm moving to this other pattern. And it was wonderful because
yeah,
it's so easy to assume, I think, for sewists
mm,
to think, well, it's me, I'm the problem, not the pattern.
yeah,
Sometimes the pattern is just not right for you. You need to make adjustments or you need a different pattern. So,
exactly. Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
I on that 100% because I had it in my mind that I particularly wanted an S bend corset. I
yeah,
wanted that particular look, and the first pattern company I used was wonderful. Like the silhouette was great if it's just an everyday average
yeah.
it worked corset, but I wanted something a little bit more vain.
Yes, yes.
And so, yeah, and I found it and I had to create the pattern a little bit and to make my minor adjustments. I think I went through maybe three mock-ups,
Mhm.
before I felt comfortable enough to start cutting into the couture and things like that. So, but yeah, it's not always you, and and that's okay. So don't beat yourself up. Sometimes go back and say, yeah, these two don't align right. you know, with the
Yeah,
waist, it should be a little bit lower than this, or a little bit higher, depending on, if you're long waisted or not. But it's sometimes it is the pattern companies, and that is okay. Sometimes they miss things, especially if they're a bigger pattern company and they, make a lot of patterns. Some things fall through the cracks.
yeah.
And
Well, and you mentioned earlier you're 6'1".
yes, yeah, yeah,
You're a cis man
yeah,
doing drag as
yeah,
a woman in historical
yeah,
spaces. And so you must need to do a fair amount of adjustment for
yeah.
height, if nothing else.
Yeah, I that's usually the only thing. The height is usually the main thing that I have to adjust. A lot of pattern companies that I use are very size inclusive, so that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, much of that, but definitely height. And I have a good friend of mine who is, shout out to my friend Kat. She is a lovely, lovely sewist. She also does vintage fashion, and she's also 6'1". She is a cisgender woman, and she's 6'1". We are the exact same height, and that is her problem as well is the length. And she has to lengthen her patterns, just like I do, to make sure that things fit the same way, that she likes them. And yeah, but yep, that's usually the thing that I have to do.
So I'm a long-waisted person, but I'm very short. So I'm both lengthening all of my torsos and
Yeah,
shortening all of my skirts.
yeah.
This feels so absurd. Are you long or short-waisted, or are you like
I No, I am long waisted. I am wasted. Yes, I am. Yes, yes, yes. So I'm always having to. That's usually the very first thing I'm doing is measuring out. When I get the bodice, I measure out from the top of the shoulder down to the waist like this, and I see because I know for me from here to here is going to be about 21 and a half inches. Like I am long. I am very long, and then I lengthen the skirts, to go down to the floor. So, oh, most definitely.
Yeah, it's the constant, like, these are my set adjustments I always know I need to make.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Which I think when you get your set adjustments and you have your master patterns, that's also harkening back to the speed. That's also part of how you can save yourself
yeah.
time. You just know you're always going to have to do it. So, Trayvon, I know that we're going to have some questions from everybody who's here with us today. and I want to leave time for them for questions, but
Yeah.
um, I just adore the energy you bring to the historical costuming. As you say, you're going from the 19th century into the 20th century, and it's stunning. I love that you are up there in Phoenix doing an historical interpreting and sharing your passion and your insights. Do you have an anecdote for us about a particularly lovely moment as an interpreter? Something mad. I'm focusing on positive because I'm certain you could share bad things that happened too, but I think it is nice for you to not have to live in that place where it's like, let me talk more doom and gloom. Let's celebrate some of your successes, in other words. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, an anecdote is just seeing the people's reaction to, the past, and seeing the seeing so many people walk up to me and say, "Oh my God, like you said before, you look like you just stepped out of, 1895," or, things of that nature, or people who are also historical enthusiasts who are like, that is exactly how they would have worn it. It makes me feel good that I've done the research, I've done the work, to make sure that I'm representing the people of the past as accurately as possible. Um, and then just having the opportunities to go into these spaces and do this interpretation work. And, there's so many lovely places out here, the Rods and House Museum, the Tempe History Museum, who, booked me, other places that, inquired to have me come, and, my other models. And it's just wonderful because I love to see that I'm doing something right here. And that people are noticing, and it's just I just thoroughly enjoy this. There is nothing else that brings me this much joy than sitting behind my sewing machines and creating these lovely pieces and wearing them out into the world and showcasing these wonderful treasures of history. So absolutely, I think that's one of the biggest things, is just seeing people who, and even for those, when I'm in my vintage costumes or dresses, and I have certain people come to me and say, my mom wore that. My grandmother had that exact hat, or my grandmother had worn a victory suit from the 40s just like that as well. So it's so cool when I get to bring some sense of nostalgia to people, and things like that just make that warms me hard, and it just makes it can make me emotional. So I try not to think on it too much.
I mean, that's lovely. And it's wonderful to have that exchange because I think the community connection and being that bridge for people is such a treasured experience, and you are a wonderful ambassador for the past and for the historical costuming community. And as we are going into our questions and chat with our friends who are here, I just want to say that Trevon, I feel like you are the face of where historical costuming is going. And I love that. I'm so excited for the future of this endeavor and where you and people like you are taking us is so good. So, yeah.
So much.
All right, my darlings. I know Lady June Squill wanted to ask you about your play, the Titanic play. If anyone else has some questions, now is your time to ask questions. My voice is going to go, so you have to do the question asking. Um, if you write your questions in the chat, I will do my best. But also, if you want to unmute yourselves, now is the time. Okay. Lady Tunesquill, what is your question about the Titanic play? Trayvon, can you just tell us a little bit about the play? Oh, yeah, there's June.
Thanks, Lady
Okay.
June
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it just sounded so fascinating.
Yeah.
You're in the play, I assume.
Yes. So I was in
Yeah.
the play. Yes. In
What
the
what part do you play?
So I was my actual character is Officer Light, Second Officer Charles
Oh,
Lightoff. So he was actually one of the most he was the only remaining officer who survived the Titanic.
oh.
12. So he's the reason I have a lot of the information as to what happened the night of the Titanic. And then I also paired as Mr. Jacob John Astor. Um, so my I had a very Gilded Age moment there. Never seen Titanic on Broadway, you will know that majority of everyone pairs as a different person. So, yes, I also cameoed as John Jacob Astor, but my role was Second Officer Lightoller. So I was the right hand man to the captain. So we worked together to do that. So super fun.
That's so good. And your costume was very dapper.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I would have much rather have worn those beautiful Edwardian hats, and but of course, and at that time, I couldn't have done it, so it's okay.
I will say that after seeing you for years in these beautiful frothy frocks, I was like, oh, Trevon looks so good in
Oh,
that suit as well. Yeah, yeah, so good. And you had a mustache too, I think.
I did have a mustache. Yes, yes, yes. He asked if I wanted to have a glued one or if I prefer to draw one on. And I have worked with glued facial hair before, and it is the worst because you feel like you have to talk like this all the time because you don't want the mustache to come off on stage because it makes you
Yes.
embarrassed.
Yeah.
So I did draw for that show.
Oh my gosh. Listen, it looks so good. I thought you'd grown a mustache for the show. It's like, that is commitment. But I'm with you on the glued mustache because I have worn one once. And I was like, it it was very fabulous, I will
Yeah.
say. Like big curly handlebar bar situation. But the whole time I was like, it's coming off. I just did a bunch of this like, oh, don't mind me. I'm actually making sure it's still attached. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So it isn't a play that you wrote. It's a play that
No,
existed that you were doing. Because I didn't know there was a. Is it a musical?
it's a musical. So yeah, so it's an adaptation of the difference between the musical and the movie is that the musical actually takes on the lives of the real life characters who are real life people, excuse me,
Mhm.
who are on the Titanic. The movie has
Mhm.
some to it, and like by spotlighting Jack and Rose, there really wasn't
Yeah.
Jack and Rose per se on
Right.
Titanic. But yeah, the show focuses primarily on the people, on the Titanic. So like I said, John Jacob Astor, the Strausses. You had I'm trying to think of the Thayers, the Guggenheims, the actual first class individuals, and then it highlights a lot of the third class individuals. It first debuted on Broadway in 1997 or 1996, one or the other. So you can find bootleg versions of it from the original on YouTube, but the actual 2023 or 2024 musical is on Broadway HD. You can actually watch it. Um,
Huh.
Beautiful rendition. Yeah, that same thing. The music is incredible. The music is absolutely incredible. We Every show we did not have one dry eye in the audience,
Mm.
and it's just so heartbreaking to know that these were the experiences of these individuals on the Titanic. So, but yes, 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 absolutely.
So
Thank you. Thank you.
do
Yes.
you do you sing? And if you do sing, what's your range?
I do sing. Yes, I do. I sing classical, and my range is a tenor. I'm a first tenor actually. And I can falsetto really well to get up to make some alto and sopranos. But first tenor is definitely my vocal range.
Oh my goodness. You, so you costume, you act, you sing. Do you dance?
Oh God, no.
Ah,
I'm a strong mover. I'm a very strong mover. I am not a good dancer. And actually, there was a in the show Titanic. It was a musical number. It's called "Doing the Rag," and our director was also our choreographer. My God, I did not know I was going to have it together by opening because the dance was so complex, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot." But I made it, and I carved out the time because again, dancer is not my strong suit.
so you're a triple threat, not a quadruple threat, but you are bringing so many fine skills to the stage. I love that. So amazing. And strong mover is now going to be like my favorite description for that as a theater person. I think that is a great strong. So good. It's so good. Oh my goodness. Alicia, David, Captain Azar, do you have any questions for our wonderful guest, Trevon, who is here, just being so delightful today? Oh, yes, Alicia, unmute yourself. Come on, girl. I can see you're thinking about it.
I am. I'm just waiting for one of the cats to come down and crash it.
Oh,
But maybe they're sleeping. Yeah, we're just getting them back together, so
okay.
it's not ragged. Um, what was I gonna ask? Oh, so I know that you do 1890s, the Guardian, sort of that period. Um, and I know you don't use fashion, or you don't generally use fashion plates. So what else? Where do you get your other pieces of inspiration?
Good question. A lot of times I get a lot of my inspiration from um, real life photos from Pinterest. So like actual photos of people from that time period, movies, the Gilded Age. Even though a lot of their color combinations do seem a little bit modern, but um, there are times where I will see certain things and I will try to tweak it to make it a little bit more historical. Um, but I don't know. I just really get anywhere. I mean, it could be scrolling on Facebook and coming across some old photos and I'm like, man, that looks really nice. Like I can do that. So, and then there are some times where I do see some fashion plates and they will give me a blueprint to, start from there. Um, as far as like, the silhouette or the construction of the garment or things like that. So it's really I will gain the inspiration again from anywhere. But like I said earlier, a lot of the times it comes from seeing the fabric. And I'll see the fabric and I'll say, that screams 1878 to me. Like I made a natural form gown last year and it was with fabric. I kept seeing at the fabric store and I was like, what can I make from this? And then I was like, oh, okay, I'll make a natural form. And it turned out great. And now that also lives in the UK. Someone from,
Oh, I love that.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that your gowns go on to have happy
Yeah.
adventures, and that you are able to like sort of you're like the gown adoption agency. You make a beautiful thing and you're like, who'd like to adopt this gown that I
Yeah,
look so good in? You too can look really fabulous in this. Yeah.
exactly. And a lot of times it's from other beautiful plus size individuals who have such a hard time
Mm,
finding things that fit them.
yes.
So they see mine, we're usually around the same measurements, and I'm like, yeah, here, I can make another one of those
Yeah.
things. Like,
Yeah.
not that big.
No, but it is this thing where in historical costuming spaces. There are a few of us who are plus size people who
Yeah.
are making costumes, but we're a few of us. There are lots of like very, willowy, lovely people who are willowy. And sometimes it feels like, well, if you're not willowy, good luck. So it's wonderful to make those resources available to other people. Yeah.
And I want you to know I have been on the hunt for some similar fabric to your rainbow bustle dress because I wanted to make one and I was going to surprise you and just, show up at an event. And I absolutely love that rainbow piece. It is,
Oh, oh,
I am color
oh,
person. So I'm like, I love colors.
oh. Yeah, I'll send you all the links for all the fabric. Don't you worry. I'm now deeply invested in this happening. That would be amazing. I have a goal that next year that even more of us wearing historical fashion that's like pride flags, but make it a bustle dress. So,
I
Captain
love
Azar, oh yes, oh, it would be so fun. And then we'd need to do photos, right? So Captain Azar says, not a question, but a comment. As a broad shoulder, plus size person, your costuming always inspires her that she too can look fabulous in historical styles.
oh, you know what? And that, out of everything we've talked about, that is probably the one thing that'll make my day the most because I am a size 16 in women. I have a size 13 shoe in men. I don't have super broad shoulders, as you can see. I have slopey shoulders, but I'm 6'1". I have massive hands, and so to the original person or to the naked eye, I don't fit the qualifications to wear these beautiful gowns and things of that nature. So that's another piece of the puzzle that I'm really fighting for is to show that you don't have to fit, what people think femininity looks like or beauty looks like to feel that. I don't care if you have broad shoulders and a very small waist or, small shoulders and a bigger waist, whatever the case is, whatever you feel beautiful in, do it. Again, I am living proof that you will find your tribe. There are people out there who will love on you just for being who you are. So that has completely made my day because yes, that is what I'm doing this for, is to show other people, get out here, be beautiful, feel beautiful. You
So
deserve.
good. You deserve it, absolutely. And listen, I was very inspired by Room of One's Own back in the period before you were born, and and Helena Bonham Carter and her like big hair and the like, wonderful Edwardian looks. And at a certain point, I thought, I do not look like Helena Bonham Carter. Does not matter. Wishes and dreams. I will never look like her. And that's all right because I can be me in these spaces. And
That,
it's such a wonderful feeling.
that's such, and that is what the world is calling for today: is authenticity, is for realness. People are wanting that. They want the realness. They're tired of saying things that they necessarily cannot obtain or isn't realistic. Not everyone is a size 6. Not everyone has petite shoulders or smaller feet. There are people out here who look like me, who look like you, and we are redefining what beauty standards are. And I
And
think
it's
that's beautiful thing.
and especially in historical spaces
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I was explaining to a dear friend who was worried about going to costume college, not for the normal reasons.
Yeah.
She was worried because she'd just seen the most fabulous photos that they post for their social
Mhm.
media and their publicity. And we could take that, we could
Yeah.
have a conversation about that. She's like, oh, I'm not pretty enough, I don't look right. I was like, oh my gosh, no,
Ah,
that, these
yeah.
are these are publicity photos. This is someone on the best day, in the best light, in the best photography. No one
Right.
is that pretty all the time. And also, we're there to have fun with people who like costumes. We're there to swan about, have a good time. It's like brides. Everybody looks beautiful when you're having a good time, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it takes a lot of work to look like that too. No one, like you said, no one wakes up that gorgeous every day. It takes a lot of transformation, a lot of the padding, makeup, and
Yeah,
everything.
yes. I love to talk about padding because even I will pad, and that always astounds people. And they're like,
Mhm.
what? I'm like, listen, do you want
Yeah,
a tight lace or do you want to pad? I want to
yeah,
pad. I don't
want
want
to
a tight lace.
absolutely.
I'd like to make it look like I'm tight lacing, thanks. I'll just make other things bigger so the things I want to be smaller look smaller,
Right,
okay?
right, absolutely. Oh, goodness. So yes, please understand that you are beautiful just as you are. I know that's a cliche, but it really is the truth. You are beautiful just as you are. And there are so many things here that can enhance that beauty as well too. Padding, of course.
Padding. Padding. No,
Yeah.
I think that when you get into historical fashion and you get sort of arcane enough, you start hearing about the padding. But I feel like it's something we need to normalize more in
Yeah.
historical fashion. And it's like, can you do drag? So in drag spaces, padding is like part of the
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
And historically,
It
people
was,
padded
yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
everything.
Absolutely. It was such a common thing. People padded, you know. When you see those super tight waists, yes, some people do lace down well, but for the most part, it's an illusion. Yeah. Boy, they have a lot of padding going on under those skirts and petticoats. So,
Yes, they do. And I love that. But also, you know, I love that they were very comfortable with like needing to pat some things out. And sometimes it was to emphasize the silhouette, and
mhm.
sometimes it was to make the tailoring easier. That's the other thing, right? Like, oh,
Yes.
this weird space. This is a problem I have where I have this like negative space between
Mhm.
my shoulder and my bosom.
Yeah.
And so trying to tailor that out is really hard. But I can slip a little pad in there and that's easy. Solves the problem. Yeah. So good. I want us to have more of these conversations where we're talking about the very real, like normal things people did to achieve these silhouettes that they
Yeah.
did not just roll out of bed and look
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So good. Trevon, it's so wonderful having you here. You are such a delight. Captain Azar has shared your links.
Thank you.
Everyone, you can
Thank you.
find Trevon on TikTok,
Yeah.
on Instagram. You have a Facebook page,
I
but
do
you're
have.
mostly on TikTok and Instagram.
Yes, and I also have my Patreon as well too, where I am getting you get a little more exclusive content, you know, background content here. You can also find it on my TikTok page and I believe on my Instagram. I have to double check that, but definitely my TikTok page is at the top in my bio. You can subscribe there as well too.
Wonderful. And if you're coming to Costume College,
Yeah,
you can see Trevon there on
please.
Friday. Come to the panel, come learn. Also, we will be there. And of course, we're going to have to get all of the photos and all of the nonsense. I'm so excited. I'm also be so good. My darlings, my
Yeah,
voice is almost at its end, so I'm going to send us all off into the world. Trevon, outside of Costume College and petticoats to patio dresses, do you have anything else new and wonderful coming up
yeah.
for you?
So I am starting another show. It's Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So I play Judah in that show. We start rehearsals Monday. Uh, I know, I know. So we will start. That show opens August 23rd and then runs through October 5th. So come on down to the Hale Theater in Gilbert. and you'll get to see me perform in that wonderful show. It's a lot. So, but you can find all that information on my Facebook, and I'll make sure I post it to my Instagram and all that wonderful stuff. So, yeah, so that's what's coming up in the works, and we're gonna get it going.
Exciting. Trevon, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Several years ago, you reached out to me, and now about like, were there any other historical costumers around? And now
Yeah,
we have a
yeah.
friendship. We've gotten to like meet in person. It's been such a wonderful joy having you in my life and
Thank
seeing
you.
your successes. Good luck on everything, my darling. Everyone, I will talk to you later when I have a voice. Have a wonderful day. Please
Every
treasure yourselves. Take very good care. Bye, everyone. Cheers.